Please take note of the following disclaimers. This channel does not provide financial, investment, or tax advice. I am not a licensed advisor or registered professional. I am a retail investor sharing my personal opinions, experiences, and lessons learned along the way. Nothing in this video should be interpreted as advice or recommendations. Every viewer is responsible for their own research, decisions, and outcomes. Your financial situation is unique, and you should always consider speaking with a qualified professional before acting on any information. I might be right, wrong, or somewhere in between. They are just my personal perspectives as an individual investor. As such, all content in this video is for education, discussion, and entertainment purposes only. Also note, past performance does not ensure future results. Thank you. Hey, hello everybody. My name's Perry from Perry's PIIverse, and I got with me again, better call Paul. We got Paul beside me. We're doing our latest edition, the April 2026 edition of Perry and Paul's Coffee and Cash Flow. Hello, Paul.
Hey, Perry. How you doing?
Doing good. It's been a wild ride this past month. When did you say we last talked? I can't remember. You said
it was March 6th.
All right, so we're almost a month ago, just over a month ago, because it's currently April 8th that we're recording this one.
Yeah, and this is our fifth one now.
I know, we're becoming regulars.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, no, and of course, March has been definitely one heck of a wild ride, as I'm sure everybody that's watching knows. I mean, actually, just as we talked, the war already started, because I believe the Iran-US-Israel war started on February 28th. Literally, it was almost like the end of a calendar month they started. So March was the month of war on the markets. And it definitely took a lot of things for a wild ride. I mean, anyone that hasn't got energy sector was like, oh, geez, I really missed out. Anyone that has energy sector was sort of like quietly sort of rubbing their hands. They didn't want to cheer about it because war is ugly. No one wants war, of course, but seeing the barrel of oil go up to triple digits, yeah.
It's I guess it's a good point to be diversified, because you can see how for a while your tech stocks were kind of like leading the way and your portfolio was up. And then all of a sudden, silver and gold and other metals were up, right? Yeah. And now those are both down from their highs, and all of a sudden, oil's where it's at. Oil and utilities.
Yeah. And now the good news is the oil sector, which was basically the most boring, was in hibernation mode for all of 2024, 2025. Like, no one was really investing in anything oil that much. They weren't that excited about it. But, oil was sitting down at $60, $63, $55 a WTI barrel. I mean, if for us covered call investors, people that had any interest in covered call ETFs in the sector, like ENCL, which is a very well established, one of those covered call ETFs that everyone sort of has in their portfolio, because even though it's boring and it's down, what was it? I think ENCL's trading box. The nice thing about it is it's always had a very well defined trading box, price box. But it was never, it was always in more the lower side of that box for 2025. Like, we saw some 17s. Normally it was in the 18, 19, but we did obviously see some 17s. Even I think it touched 16 once quickly, but it went back up. But those people that held that and sort of put it to the side and forgot all about having ENCL or USOI. I also hold USOI, which is an American one. This has been the year where those guys are starting to show up as rock stars. Like, I think you've been even doing some swing trading on ENCL, eh?
Yeah, I not only ENCL, but I even added Oily from Evolve to my portfolio back in January. And within 2 months, I made 26%.
Wow.
And I mean, if I could make 26% every 2 months, how could you argue with that? So I ended up selling my entire Oily position, which was a small position anyways, but to realize 26% gain that quickly, and I just rolled the money into Utes. So still getting paid, right?
Yeah.
Still getting paid. And ENCL, the price box, I've noticed it seemed like it was going lower and lower, right? Like
Yeah.
it was hitting lower lows and no more
Right.
higher highs until the war
2026.
started, right? And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, now the price box is skyrocketed.
Well, and I actually did a video on it because one of my videos just from about a month and a half ago, we talked about the energy sector and why, we were talking about swing trading, and we also talked about how there was already some signs that the energy market was actually starting to notice an indication of war. If you watch that video from me, I don't know, it was about a month ago I did it, and it talked about, I showed ENCL, I showed Athabasca, and I showed OSI, which is an ETF on the US WTI oil price, right?
Yeah.
People were already seeing, and there's price boxes there. People were already seeing that all three of them, their prices were slowly creeping up as of late January. It
Yeah.
was going up so slowly that people weren't noticing it. And I think you were saying like ENCL, you noticed that 2025, 2024, when oil was really not exciting, it was in hibernation. I noticed ENCL's price box was slowly slipping down a little lower. In other
Yeah.
words, we never saw 20s anymore. We always saw upper 19s. And when we saw it 17s, we now saw low 17s. So it moved down a little. Again,
Yeah.
I wasn't worried about it because that's still, in my opinion, a commodity driven drop in the price box. That's not because it was eroding. It was only because oil was dropping in that, right?
Yeah.
But you noticed in January that the high was now creeping back up, not seeing 1919. Then you saw 20, then you saw 2050. And through January, February, there were already precursors of the market sort of taking into account that the US and Israel might attack Iran and that this could cause some major oil. So people were starting to already, that knew the oil sector, were already starting to hedge their bet. And ENCL, well, you saw it because you were starting to, when I think I remember one of your videos, you were saying that, oil, I think ENCL reached in its 22s and you sold some off, you trimmed some.
Yeah.
So
in 2025, what I was doing, Perry, was every month I got my dividends, I was buying a little bit more ENCL because it was way below my average cost. So as long as it's below my average cost, I'll keep adding to the position, even if it's just reinvesting the dividends from ENCL.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, like you said, I made my last purchase the beginning of January with my last dividend. And then next thing you know, about the 15th or 20th of January, ENCL started to skyrocket.
Yeah.
And I think at that point in time, I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on. I think I might have seen in the news that the Americans were moving some battleships, but I didn't really think about it, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, ENCL hit 21 or 2150. And at the same time, PLTE from Harvest, it dropped like a rock, right? When people sold out of their AI or their tech stocks, it dropped down to, I think, $16, $17. And my average cost was about $22.50. Right. So in my mind, I'm going to sell ENCL at $21.50. I'm going to buy PLTE at like $17.50 and go from a 26-cent dividend to a 60-cent dividend. So
and there's the key part of it. When you're doing, and that's why I created another video, because you actually inspired it, Paul. It's, if you are an income investor and you're swing trading versus if you're a growth investor mindset and you're swing trading, they are two different mindsets. They are two different mindsets. And that's why I actually wanted to use your example, is that you were swing trading ENCL as an income investor. And I'm swing trading Athabasca, which is a pure growth stock, with my pure growth hat on. So I swing trade Athabasca for its pure purpose of increasing its appreciated value.
Yeah.
You are swing trading as an income investor, and it makes total sense for something like ENCL or whatever. You're doing what's called income investing, trimming gains, and then moving to a better yield. So you basically took at ENCL, took the gains from it, and then moved it to another income generating asset like PLTE that was a good deal, which gave you not only that, but it also gave you a higher yield while it was low. So you were actually doing rebalancing as opposed to I was doing swing trading, right? So
and what I like for myself about doing this as an income investor is I can hold ENCL for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years without trimming, and I still get paid every month, right? So it's not like a pure growth investor or swing trader where if you don't buy low and sell high, you're not making any money.
You're making nothing.
Right? You
Yeah.
make
The
nothing.
only time you're making money as a growth swing trader is if you are capitalizing the gains when you sell them, right?
Yeah. And
That's one of the benefits of swing trading a covered call ETF. And again, I don't even want to call it swing trading. It really is income rebalancing.
yeah,
But you are trimming gains and capitalizing the gains so that you can use those gains and move it to another covered call ETF that brings up your primary goal, my primary goal, which is not to appreciate the NAV. Our primary goal is to appreciate and grow the income on a monthly cash flow. This
yeah,
is something that the growth investors just don't get. The pundits, like Ben and all those guys, they turn around and say they don't get it. They don't understand us. Well, they don't understand us because they don't understand that our priority, our goal is to generate income and maximize income, not to try to appreciate the NAV of our portfolio, right?
yeah, yeah, for sure. And now, I mean, you and I both went down the road of buying some ultra high yield ETFs, right? And I think you have to be careful with that, in
Yeah.
terms of keeping some NAV stability. But when you're
Yes.
dealing with something like ENCL, the world needs oil. As we can see
Yeah.
right now, we know, this is
Yeah.
something that people have to have. And ENCL, oil cyclical. It's going to go up. It's going to go back down again. We know
Yeah.
that once this whole Iran thing is over, eventually it will go back down.
Yeah.
And it become that boring, reliable defensive position again, where I'll just start slowly accumulating shares until the next time, right? It skyrockets.
Well, and that's the thing. And that is a big difference again between, like you brought it up. It's the big difference between swing trading as a growth investor. If a growth investor wants to, let's say, ignite or magnify their goal, because remember, their goal as a growth investor is to increase the wealth of their portfolio, is to increase or appreciate the value of their portfolio. They absolutely don't care about income, right? So they do swing trading to expedite or magnify the ability of harvesting that NAV and basically bringing it back and cycling it so they can actually go higher and higher and increase their NAV. You brought it as an income investor, swing trading, quote unquote. I don't like calling it rebalancing or swing trading an income covered call ETF. You and I could sit on ENCL for 2 years and wait for ENCL to finish its long-standing old cycle and waiting for it to move to another super cycle or another positive cycle. And why? Because it's generating us income. Our goals are being met every month. ENCL produces income.
Yeah.
We get a bonus when we can sell it for a capital gain as well. But the funny part is, unlike a growth investor, we do it so that we can move it to another covered call ETF that's generating more yield than the one that you actually sold out of, right?
Yeah. And I think, Perry, there might even be another category of investor, people who either day trade or swing trade just to pay their bills, right? They're not necessarily trying to accumulate wealth. They just need to make a certain amount of money from their day trading and swing trading just to pay their bills. Where when I sell ENCL, if I make a $2,000 realized gain, it's not to put that $2,000 in my pocket and pay my bills. It's to take that $2,000, put it into a different ETF, start increasing my monthly income, right? Yeah.
And that's why the one video that I created about 2 months ago talked about a whole mindset shift, because people have to get off the idea that income investors, that they're just some kind of offshoot of a growth strategy. They are not. An income investor thinks completely different than a growth investor. And that's why I brought up the whole concept of don't treat your covered call ETFs as if they're investments. Treat them as if they're a consumable that you purchase. And I called them cash flow engines.
Yeah.
You're buying a cash flow engine. It's no different. It's very similar in nature of saying I'm buying an annuity.
Right.
You pay for an annuity. The annuity will pay you back. The benefit of a covered call ETF versus an annuity is that the covered call ETF will pay you indefinitely, even if it's an eroded amount, until you sell it. An annuity pays you back what you paid it. So It's better than an annuity, but at the end of the day, it has the same constructs in the sense that you're buying this asset so that it can keep paying you every month a money to pay your bills, right?
Yeah.
So,
all right, Perry, let's jump on to a new topic.
okay,
Well,
yes.
let's discuss the survey that you did.
Yeah,
Somehow I
okay.
completely missed it, but you were interested in finding out how many people are actually using their passive income investing like you and I do. And you and
Yeah.
I, we use it totally different
Yes.
because you and your wife are 100% retired.
Yeah.
Whereas right now I'm collecting EI, so I have a source of income. And my wife, she works 3 jobs because she loves to work. So she
Yeah.
obviously has income coming in there. And so therefore I'm only paying half the bills, household bills.
Right.
And I'm only using a portion of my passive income to pay for that.
Yeah.
Where you, on the other hand, I think you said about 90% of your bills
Are paid for
so
by my
so why
portfolio.
don't you tell us about the survey?
Yeah. So the survey was inspired by Gary Gill.
Yeah.
He did an interview with Marcos about, I think it was a few months ago. It was an older video. It wasn't something that just came out. I just happened to finally watch it just about a month and about 15 days ago. And I was watching it, and Gary was talking. That was the one where he was talking about how his MSTE basically collapsed, and what the heck did I make a mistake and all that. But in that video, he said something that was very, very telling, and it actually stimulated my curiosity. He said, I don't know anybody that lives off of passive income. Now, when I say passive income, I have to clarify, because after I did the survey, some people said, well, I'm on retail. I use real estate rental. No, when I talk about passive income, I think we were all talking about the smaller passive income from covered call ETFs and derivatives, not the general statement passive income. So what Gary was saying in that video, he says, I don't know anybody that actually lives off of the income from passive income, from derivative-based passive income, covered call ETFs. And I'm going like, what? I mean, honestly, I live on it. Like, literally, other than my CPP, everything I pay my retirement on is on passive income. So it really hit me. I said, am I the only one? Like, like, how rare am I as a bird? So I decided to do this survey about 15 days ago, and I posted it on my channel. I also posted it on Blossom so that I could get as much traffic and get enough polling results as possible. We got 486 people, so that's a pretty good scale. If I had someone like the size of maybe Adriano's channel, maybe I've got much better results. But 486 is a pretty good scale. Yeah. And in there, even though the first news is that 16% of all respondents said that they generally live off their passive income.
Okay.
So I'm in that category, 90%. And again, I would be 100%, but I have CPP. So, and some people would also, what's that?
70 people, maybe 70 people, 16%?
16%. So it's under 20 of 400, 500. Yeah, about 70 people, 70 people said that they live mostly on covered call ETF income. Yeah. Again, though, then there were some that were very small. 9% said that half of their income is paid for by their passive income. Now, after the survey, and I looked at some of the comments that were coming in there, they were saying that, well, I would have been 90%, but I have a pension plan, and the pension plan pays for half of it. So it's not as if I'm not committed to using my passive income portfolio. It's the fact that my pension already pays for half, and I only need another half. So it augments it, not pays for it all. And then the rest of it were basically, I think it was 19% said that they used passive income cash flow to pay for some bills, like going on a vacation, maybe paying their phone bill, maybe paying some part of their mortgage payment, stuff like that. But they generally don't use the portfolio's monthly income. Most of it is reinvested. And then a whopping 56%, I think it was the number, 59%, it was big, said that they don't withdraw anything. They literally reinvest all of the money right back into it. So I found that actually surprising, Paul, because I'm thinking, like, if you're young, and everyone says the younger you are, if you basically have no need for cash and you're basically using it to grow your portfolio, I guess devil's advocate is, well, why are you not using a growth portfolio, right? So it was an
Right.
interesting question to ask. And a lot of people said that one, they liked that the income that was being generated that could actually be used in cases to buy growth portfolio. So they were using income and reinvesting in growth, or some of them
Yeah.
said, no, I just like having the income cycle so that if I ever needed it, I could just pull it out. So those are some of the responses. So
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess a lot of people are probably hybrid investors, right?
yes,
And even though a portion of their portfolio is passive income, they're just reinvesting it to grow it. And
right.
it could be a lot. I mean, a lot of people who watch our videos are older,
Yep.
obviously, and
Yep.
a lot of them might be only a few years away from retiring. So
Right.
they're building that passive income portfolio, kind of like what I was doing, knowing that there would be a change to my employment situation. I wanted to be ready for it. So
Right.
I was focused on how much can I make per month as opposed to trying to keep, because if I wanted to keep my portfolio balance more stable, I would
Mhm.
have had funds like say HDIV, right? HDIV, where it's done well share value, but it doesn't pay as much. But that's
Right.
not the mode that I was in. I was really focused on how can I get from making $1,000 or $2,000 a month to making $10,000 a month.
Right.
And now that I'm kind of in that $8,000 to $10,000 range, I'm more thinking, okay, I need a really solid foundation. So
Yeah.
this portfolio will survive as long as I do.
Yeah, and that's what was good about the comments. So what I did honestly in the survey, and actually, for those that don't know on your side, I just released the video that basically showed all the results from that survey.
Yeah.
The key part that was really interesting is I could have gone through I think I had 95 comments that were in there between Blossom comments and YouTube comments. And I could have gone through it and sort of done my own biased perspective, but I
Yeah.
actually extracted all the comments, fed it into AI, and I actually did let AI do a full assessment on the comments. And so when you watch the video, you actually see AI's interpretation and assessment of all the results to say a lot of people, for example, that were barely withdrawing, in other words, the 25% or less, or those that were not withdrawing at all, they were doing it because they were, like you were saying, they're near retirement or whatever, they're near fire or retire, and they still don't believe that the strategy works. So what they were doing is, in many cases, people were commenting, I was letting it build income and I wanted to see how steady that cash flow was, right?
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of disbelief or a lot of skepticism, but they were in that testing the waters to see, like you said, going in towards retirement, making sure that the income is relatively stable so that when they actually pull the trigger and actually start withdrawing, that they feel safe that they can withdraw the amount they need. And is it safe when the markets are volatile and going up and down that I can still pull that, say, $3,000 a month out of your portfolio because you're extracting it. You are withdrawing it from your portfolio.
Yeah.
It's no more an investment because you're paying bills with it. So that was it. And the other one was a result was generally people like having that cash in their hands as well. You know, it's one thing to say you're a growth portfolio and you bought all the tech stocks and you're up 80%. Well, how hard are you up now with, Microsoft down 40% and all those blue chips that you were buying?
Yeah.
All that paper gain that you had no actual gains on is all gone. And okay, you can sit on it longer and wait for it to go up. But when you have to pay a bill, Microsoft down 40% isn't going to be that pretty for you to withdraw in order to pay that bill, right? The cash is there, and every month they can decide if they actually want to use it or if they want to reinvest it.
Yeah, that's right. No, I really like that idea of taking all the comments and feeding it into AI and having it sort through them. I think for some videos where I get a lot of comments and I've asked people a specific question, of what should I do with my case study portfolio, and I have a scenario and I want to know what my audience thinks. And then I started getting all these answers. And like you said, you can go through and kind of, read them and you can be biased, right? I can find the people who commented the way that I think I should, right? As opposed to maybe ignoring some of the negative comments or the ones that I don't.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
so
we're
I like
human.
the idea.
Yeah,
like the
I didn't
idea.
think about it because I said, how am I going to in this video capture the essence of all these comments? Because I really think the comments were more valuable than the actual poll results, right?
Yeah,
But I'm going, how am I going to congeal this all together and consolidate it into a good assessment? I thought, well, I've got AI. Why wouldn't I let AI do the work? And it was really good because it's objective. It just says, I'm just going to tell you what I see, right? And it
yeah,
was really good. So if people watch the video, it found it very fascinating. It was a wide variety of comment responses. Everyone has their own unique situation. So there
sure.
was no those
Or
that did most of their withdrawals and live on their retirement. They all have high confidence. No, again, some of them that were only at 50% withdrawal and the rest is reinvested is just because their situation allows them to do it. They're getting a
yeah,
lot of income from pensions, CPP, OAS. So their portfolio doesn't get as stressed. It doesn't have to be the major contributor to your monthly retirement or fire portfolio living expense.
were you surprised to find that a lot of people, 16% responded saying, yeah, they're living off their
Yeah.
portfolio, right? You were surprised?
I was yeah, I would say I was surprised because I thought a lot of people were still testing the waters. I thought a lot of people were maybe using half of it, but they were still not too sure.
Yeah,
Whereas Gary thought nobody did it.
yeah.
I
I think,
sort of thought it might be a little lower than 16%, but
yeah,
it was amazing how many people actually commented saying it said it's a game changer. Like those are the things that AI didn't turn around and literally exasperate on or expand upon. But
yeah,
some of the comments on those that are living all on their passive income right now, they basically kept on saying how it was a game changer for their retirement. Like, you know,
yeah.
and people like
See,
you actually, there was a couple of people just like you that comment. I just read some of them today that said I was just laid off from a Mag 7 company, and basically if it wasn't for my passive income, I'd be in trouble. My passive income has saved my family's lifestyle, right?
yeah, yeah. I think, Perry, the difference between you and Gary and me is that I've been in the passive income investing community through Adriano and Erica for
Right.
years now,
Yeah,
right? Because
2020, right?
they have a Facebook group,
Yeah,
right? And I've been a member of the Facebook group for a long time, right? So over the years, I've read conversations where people have said, hey guys, I just retired, fully
yeah,
living off my passive income now. And even Adriano, he'll do a video, his testimonial videos, right?
right.
Where he talks to people who have retired and are living off their portfolios now. So I knew there was a lot of people already doing this. That's why I kind of laugh when you hear,
Yeah,
people say that you can't do this, you're going to
yeah.
fail, blah blah
Well,
blah. But
and
it's
it's funny you
people
said
have been
that,
doing it for a
Paul.
long time now.
Yeah, and one of the commenters on the people that said that they live on their passive income 100%.
Yeah,
Again, almost other than CPP, which they're just entitled to, and they're going to take. Why wouldn't I take it? Right? It's my cash, right? But
sure.
take that away. I'm living on 100% of my passive income. If it wasn't for passive income, I would not be retired. One of the people actually commented, and it is actually a telling thing about the community as a whole. They said, we don't want to brag about it or talk about it in Blossom or on YouTube channels because then we get criticized for being stupid. Like, this is not going to last. Are you crazy
Yeah,
retiring on something so unstable? So these people are like, you know what? I don't need the hassle. I don't tell everybody that I'm retired and living on my passive income because I
yeah,
don't want to hear all the detrimental, derogative attacks on my portfolio because they're like, you can't be doing that, whatever. So I
yeah,
found that interesting is that it's like the silent minority. A
yeah,
lot of those ones that said they're living like me, living on they're like AI called it out. They said, Perry, you're not alone. You're just one of the very rare people that are actually an influencer and actually making it transparent.
right.
So and that's where they said they found it very valuable. That's why I'm doing really good on my YouTube channel is because I'm one of the few people that actually are using passive income successfully and living on it. You know,
Yeah,
you know, everyone uses it. You brought it up. Adriano is the GOAT on passive income. The
yeah,
problem everyone points out, and again, nothing wrong with it. Adrian makes so much money on his YouTube channel, his promotions and everything else. He doesn't have to live off of his passive income. So
No.
people call them out on that and say, well, you're a bad example. Of course, your portfolio is going up to $2 million. You're reinvesting every penny you make on passive income. So they
Yeah.
use that as an example. Well, you can't use Adrian because Adrian's not actually living off of his portfolio.
Yeah.
I am living on my portfolio. So I think we were talking about this. I think you asked me that question is, if I lost my passive income and I went back to just my old pension, which my old company pension would have generated me about just under $2,000 a month.
Yeah. Would have been.
If I would have stayed where I was, I would basically just barely be making ends because between CPP and my pension and withdrawals from my RRSP because of the old balanced portfolio, I would have had just enough to live off of, like
Right.
comfortably, but nothing more. Like,
yeah. Would have been a struggle.
It would have, yeah, I would have, for example, I would have not done my $80,000 kitchen rental. I would never bought a hot tub. I would never be building my daughter's TFSA accounts with all the excess. Like my whole retirement is different because of passive income being my source of income versus my pension, my RRSPs, and my CPP. And again, if I were, so do I worry about how my strategy is going to work if the markets collapse? Because you were talking about that, right? Of course I worry about it because at the end of the day, like I know Adriano has gone through it through the 2020 pandemic.
Yeah.
My portfolio has not been stress tested in a pandemic before. So
Yeah.
if you get a big global collapse, it'll be interesting.
Okay, so let's take what you just said and let's move into a topic that you and I were discussing before. Now, my portfolio right now is less than $400,000.
Yeah.
And yours is over, I think, 1.5 million.
Yeah, it's been hovering in the 1.5 million current NAV for well over a year now. So yeah.
Right. So your portfolio is almost 4 times the size of mine, right? Yeah. But you said that just now. You said that if the market was to absolutely collapse, would you be a little bit worried? And you said yes, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm wondering for myself, being the person who has the much smaller portfolio, should I be considering having an emergency fund? Should I consider having what I told you? I created a cash flow wedge. You know, are these things like before? I just kind of knew that if I lost my job, I had the passive income as a backup.
As a backup, yeah.
Right, as a backup. But now, what backs up my passive income if that fails?
Right, because you don't have employment right now, right? So
not fails, but let's just say there's a 30-40% correction in the market. Right. And all of a sudden, my passive income drops from $8,000 a month to like $2,000. You know what I mean? That might only last for a few months or 6 months or a year, but just in case, you know. So, is there some merit to having an emergency fund, some kind of a cash wedge or a cash flow wedge?
Yeah, and this is where I brought up the concept of something as an income investors have a concept that works more effectively than using cash wedges. If you're a growth investor, a cash wedge for an emergency during down market cycles, because remember, they need it because, good example right now, let's say you invested heavily in, let's say Microsoft is down 40% right now. Name a few others. You bought all those blue chips like Tesla and Microsoft and stuff, and they were giving you great paper growth. And you're retired now. And remember, if you're retired, it's the meltdown of what assets you have that's paying your retirement. So while the markets are good, you only have to sell, say, 10 shares of Microsoft to pay your October monthly expenses. They need a cash flow or a cash wedge, because what happens when Microsoft and Tesla and all those guys that the tech bubble crashed and you now are down 30% on your holdings, and you now have to instead of selling 5 shares of Microsoft, you have to sell 10 shares of Microsoft. Of course, you don't want to do that. So they create this thing called a cash wedge that says, let me help augment that and lower the amount that I withdraw by doing a cash wedge, right? An income investor doesn't have to worry about that because they literally have capitalized cash flow coming in every month. So the better strategy is this thing I call a living expense protection buffer, right? It basically says if you need $6,000 a month, make sure you build an income portfolio that generates X number of times more than that. so that when you have bad markets and it brings back down that, when markets are good, let's say you need 6,000 and let's say you're doing a 3 times. So that means this plus 12 up to 18. So if you need 6,000, you should be running an income flow that a portfolio that generates you $18,000 a month. So that while things are good, the good part about this versus using a cash wedge is you are reinvesting that cash because the markets are good. You don't need it. So you can now reinvest 12,000 of that 18,000 and take your 6. When the markets are bad, that 18 drops to 16, drops to 12, maybe drops to 10. You still get your 6. You can now only reinvest 4. But the nice thing about that is you're also reinvesting while all the prices of all your ETFs are down, right? So even that 4,000 actually takes you a longer way because those stocks are now worth 40% less or 30% less. So this is the difference between income investors using a cash wedge versus them using something like a living expense protection buffer, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you were talking about. You were talking about for you, right?
Yeah. I wonder if for somebody who's maybe in their 40s and they're only making $1,000 a month in passive income at the moment, right?
Right.
And living off of their job, say they're paying, like you said, $6,000 a month in bills. And then in their mind, they're thinking, how long is it going to take me to get to 3 times, to 18,000?
18,000, yeah.
Right? Yeah. How long is it going to take? And maybe that just seems like too much for some people. I don't know.
But the counter to that is if you were a growth investor and you basically are in your 40s and you're generating $6,000 in expenses and you're generating nothing, how much NAV appreciation do you have to go before you could retire and have it pay your $6,000 a month? Yeah. At the end of the day, what it's really telling you, Paul, is you're not ready to retire. It's like your portfolio has not grown enough for you to retire. So at age 40, when you're only generating $1,000 in passive income and you need 6,000, all it's telling you is you could, one, be more aggressive, move your yield up to maybe 30, 35%, which adds risk on volatility. Or you just turn around and say, I got to build up my portfolio NAV so that 1,000 becomes 6,000 becomes 12,000, right? So it just tells you you're not ready to retire. That's all it really tells you, right? So
and I was watching a financial planner talking about the cash wedge because it popped up on my YouTube video, or on my YouTube feed, and he was talking about some people, or I guess a lot of people, try and save up 3 years worth of expenses in cash. And think about that, right? Think about that. If you're spending, say, $5,000 a month, that's what, $60,000 a year. So you got to save up $180,000 in cash before you can consider retiring.
Well, or to consider yourself safe. So here's the thing about that.
That's
cash wedge generates no income.
Right.
That's only idle cash.
That's not even your portfolio. You still have to have a portfolio to retire on.
Right.
That's just your buffer. That's just your bad times, Yeah,
because people think it's like, okay, well, that is legitimately what they're trying to tell you without even saying it. Oh, yeah. Well, you should just have 3 times your annual expenses. 3 times my annual expenses arbitrarily is $180,000. You want me just to sit and put $180,000 of cash? And again, in order for it to be a true cash reserve, you cannot take risks with it. You can't go and invest it in the stock market. You got to put it in high interest savings accounts or GICs or something that says, I will not erode. I have a guarantee. So for anybody who turns around and say, yeah, well, look at that money. You can make money on it. No, you can't, because a cash wedge's job is to be stable and there when the markets are down. Yeah. The nice thing with a cash protection buffer or a living expense protection buffer is when you don't need it, you can reinvest it and grow your portfolio, which most of the time, that's the situation you're in. When you do need it, you just basically stop reinvesting and start spending and paying your bills with it. It's a totally better way than doing cash wedges, right?
Yeah, I think so.
That being said, you and I talked about, I think we talked about the idea, well, then Perry, then why are you building a cash wedge?
Right? You're building up some dry powder.
I am. And that's why I wanted to clarify the difference between a cash wedge and emergency spending, emergency cash reserve. So a cash reserve basically is different. That's basically like a major expense happen and I don't want to sell my investments to do it. My cash flow is a certain amount of money, and I want to make sure that if some major thing happened, I have enough cash to cover it, so that, as call them extraordinary expenses.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one reason why you hold a cash reserve, which is not a cash wedge.
Or
You're doing it for
emergency. You're talking about an emergency fund.
It's emergency fund. It basically, literally, I could put it into my bank account and actually hold it there. I don't even need to hold it in my investment account. It's there in case the hot water tank goes, in case my daughter needs something, like, and I need to give her, $5,000 because it needs to be done. The other reason you do it is when you, again, call it timing the market. I have the freedom to time the market. Okay. So if I truly believe, and I personally believe, people don't have to believe what I believe, but I truly believe that we're heading into a major market correction. Matter of fact, if we miss a recession, I'll be shocked. With what's happened with the war in Iran, I can even sort of believe that we're going to enter into stagflation. So if that's true, and I truly believe that's going to happen, right or wrong, and I think the markets are going to go down another 10 or 15% in the next few months, it doesn't hurt me to stop or pause my reinvestment and actually build up dry powder, build up a cash reserve, so that I can take advantage. And I think you and I talked about this. I could take advantage. If that market does really collapse, I want to have a large, significant portion of cash that I could buy bank at $7.50. Or I could buy C-Day that's at 19 when it's normally at 21 or 22.
Yeah.
If I constantly reinvest every month, and the markets do collapse 15%, and I only have like $5,000 of emergency cash reserves, I'm not going to be able to take advantage of that major market dip. So, and again, I'm free to do it, Paul, because I don't need the extra excess cash. I pull out 10,000, I generate 30,000. I'm not like looking to grow my cash flow every month. I should be doing it. But if I believe this is truly going to happen, why would I not be ready for that opportunity? Right.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're at the scale where you can take advantage of things, right?
Right.
Now that you've built your portfolio to the point where you're making enough money, 3 times your bills. Yeah. You can, or three times your expenses. Yeah. You can set some money aside and wait for a bigger crash when it comes, if it comes.
Yeah. And if it doesn't, here's the big thing, Paul, because somebody, I think it was Darren, somebody challenged me, Perry, why are you timing the market? I mean, at the end of the day, what happens if you're wrong and the stock market's never crashed and you missed out on 3 months worth of increased monthly cash flow?
Yeah.
My answer to that is all I lost was an opportunity. I didn't lose anything else. I didn't lose money. I just lost an opportunity. I lost 3 months of potential increased monthly cash flow. So to me, that risk was well worth the cost of maybe being able to buy a lot of stocks at a much lower price. I mean, a perfect example is Bank and Call and QQCL. Back in 2023, I was buying QQCL under $20. I bought Bank at $7. I bought Call in the $7, $8 range. A year and a half later, I was selling Call at 15. I was selling Bank at 9. I was selling QQCL, I think, at 25. Right. So I want another shot at that cycle. Right.
Yeah. And you know what, Perry, even if for some reason the correction doesn't come, maybe in 3-4 months from now, the market's doing well again. And everybody says, oh, we've missed the recession. It's not going to happen.
Right.
There's always a sector that's down, right?
Exactly.
There's always like right now, for example, right now, healthcare doesn't seem to be doing very well.
Right.
So maybe you could put some money in healthcare.
Right.
Or right now, technology's not doing very well. Maybe you can put some money in technology. So in 6 months from now, maybe it'll be something else, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like the cash is sitting there. I literally could go and spend that money into a low hurting sector. Like if the recession, let's just say that I'm totally wrong and this super cycle on oil fizzles out and oil goes back down to $60 a barrel and ENCL drops back to $19 or $18 or whatever. I'll buy it. Like you said, I'll buy it on its down cycle because it still generates good income. ENCL always has a good yield. I'll buy the low sectors and my cash flow starts building up. So So to me, it was only thing I'm losing in this risk is risking a lost opportunity. That's all I'm losing, right? And the other thing you and I talked about is if I lose, like again, I live off of my portfolio. My wife and I live off my portfolio. I'm highly diversified. I've done everything I could to protect myself against a market downtrend of say 20%. I've never lived through it. So I don't know how low my monthly income is going to go.
Right.
Just as a level of paranoia until I go through one of those COVID style down cycles.
Yeah.
I want to have enough cash that I can say, hey, no problem. Yeah, my monthly income dropped from 30 down to 10, right down to where I actually need it. I at least have some of that cash to augment it back and help me float, right?
Sure.
So it's a little bit of a protection measure. I don't think it's going to happen, but it just makes me sleep at night knowing that I've got that cash in my pocket, right? So
yeah, I think it's always nice to have a little extra money set aside. And, you know, my wife and I, we do it in different ways. Like I'll open up a bank account and I'll put money in there and it's designated for vacations. Mm-hmm. But if our furnace went and we had to replace the furnace, well, there goes the vacation money. It's now the furnace money.
It's the furnace money, yeah.
And you know, and we do. I know my wife does it herself. She loves to squirrel away money, so that's why I don't worry too much about emergency funds because she's always got one. She's always got one ready to go. But Harry, I got a question for you. In your portfolio, I can't remember all your holdings. Do you have any split corps, any split share funds?
No. In my early days in 2023, when I was really starting to get into covered calls and derivative based and stuff like that. The one, and again, I know there's going to be people that are going to turn around and say, Perry, you just don't understand how split corps and closed end funds work and stuff like that. I had a bad taste for them. Like I didn't like the idea that, if it drops below this certain amount, you won't get paid, but that never happens. And sometimes it does happen. I didn't want, it's actually one of my rules. It's so funny, Paul, by the way, just a little offshoot on this. The number one post in Blossom, and actually it is my post.
Really?
And it's a post. All I did a year and a half ago, I said, these are Perry's 20 rules of income investing.
Right.
I didn't think anything of it. Some people said, what are these rules you talk about? So I said, I've written down my 20 rules on how I invest. What are the things I do? What are the things I won't do? I won't invest in dividend stocks. I set my own rules. Yeah. One of the rules I have in there, by the way, which that whole thing is, I think Blossom even mentioned it. It was the number one 2025 post. Again, I don't know why people are actually, to this day, people are constantly going to it and liking it. I don't know why, but
it's a good post.
One of those posts, one of those rules was, I won't invest in closed end funds or split corps. So again, don't ask me. I'm not an expert. In my naive understanding of them, I don't like the insecurity of it not paying me every month, right?
Sure.
And I could be wrong, but I figured I just didn't want to deal with the hassle. Tell me wrong. Why would somebody buy a split corp or a closed-end fund?
Well, you're not wrong. I mean, if that's the way you feel, right? I mean, it's definitely a risk of owning a split share. But when I started in 2020 and things like HHIS were not around, right? A lot of the funds you and I own were not around at the time.
Right.
And split shares were kind of like the funds where you could get 18, 19, 20, 25% yields, right? So they were hugely popular. And Adriano, of course, he was the one that brought us their attention, and slowly, each video he would do, we would learn about Quadrivest and then Brompton and then Middlefield. And anyway, so I bought a whole bunch of them. And then I guess it was 2022, 2023, where some markets went down and exactly what you said, a few of them stopped paying. Now, mind you, those were the more higher risk ones that he actually advised people not to buy. Right. But we looked at the high yields and what did we do? We bought them, right? So after going through that period of like 6 to 8 months of no payments, right? Once it all started to pay again, I one by one got out of all my split shares and, moved the money into other things. Now, mind you, some of the stuff I bought, like, maybe YMAX from YieldMax or YMAG didn't end up doing well anyway. So maybe I would have been better off with what I had. Yeah. But I don't know if you've noticed lately, Brompton has been coming out with some new funds that I think have been actually pretty decent, right? So I
Okay.
think the first one they might have come out with was called Split, SPLT, and it's their preferred shares, right? So it's only pays about 6%. But if you want like a real safe 6%, maybe to put your emergency fund into,
Yeah.
right? They have that. Then they came out with Class A, CLSA. And what they did was they took like 12 different split shares from all three companies and put them together,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So you got Brompton, you got Middlefield, and Quadrivest. And because you have like 12 of them together, you'll always get a monthly payment.
Right. Because one or the other is going to always pay.
Exactly, right? So
Right.
now you've got a fund of funds with split shares, okay? But anyways, that's not what I wanted to talk to you about. They just came out with, so Brompton finally decided to join everybody else, and they came out with an ETF called PAYG, right? PAYG, and it holds like 20 different companies, and they're targeting about a 19-20% yield.
Oh, wow.
And they're going to pay twice a month.
Now, but
So,
are they split? What are the
no,
underlyings?
no,
Companies or split shares?
yeah. So the underlyings are just regular companies.
Oh, okay.
And what they did was they decided to make, say, like 60% of it North American companies.
Yeah.
Then a percentage of it is European companies.
Oh,
And then a percentage of it is like Asian companies.
yeah.
Right. And then they divided those into even further sectors where the top one is like AI. And then they have I can't remember the four, right? But it's kind of like the top one is your very risky high tech.
Yeah.
Down to the bottom one where they had like some defensive stocks like Johnson and Johnson and stuff like that. But
When did they put this out?
Came out, I think, this week.
Oh, it's brand new. Okay.
I think it just launched this week. But what I like about it, Perry, is in a way it reminds me of HHIS. It reminds me of Biggie, those type of funds.
Yeah.
But instead of targeting a 25% yield or a 30% yield, they're targeting 20.
Well, and 20 to me is, any cover call ETF that generates 20% or less.
Yeah.
Well, that's an anchor to me. That means you have a very high likelihood that NAV stability is going to be in place.
Yeah.
They are better than Biggie and HHIS because their diversity is not focused on big company tech and US only. They're focused on international and even including Asia and developing. So honestly, you've enticed me enough to take a look at it. I want to see how it actually performs a little bit. But I would be interested in one like that. That's a Canadian, right? That's a Canadian ETF, right?
It is. Yeah. Their company's based out of Toronto.
I honestly would be interested in something like that because I'm now looking more so my reinvestment. So I think I said one of the things is since December 2025, I've actually substantially paused my reinvesting. January is an exception because my TFSA has received a ton of money and I had to actually reinvest them. But March, by the way, was a poster child milestone for me. It was the first time since I started passive income investing that I never did one reinvestment.
Really?
I did not make one reinvestment in March. All my trades were on Athabasca on the gross swing trade. So if I do make some reinvest, and I'm looking at it now, I'm looking for good deals on anchor positions. So this might be a good stable one to add to my category of anchors. I like it because it's unique. I'm looking for something unique. I don't want another version of Canny versus HHIC, Biggie versus HHIS. Like I want something that's unique. That's why I bought Inti, right? Because Inti was different. It was an international ETF. Yeah. This one would intrigue me because it literally fills a gap that I'm looking for. 20% yield, multiple geography coverage. I'm interested in that one. So
because it's got global diversification, it's got sector diversification. Yeah. Like you said, it's an anchor or a foundational position in your portfolio.
Yeah.
And I'm like you, I'm underweighted in my anchors. Right. Yeah. So this might be an ETF that I'm going to add to my portfolio and build up my anchors a little bit that way.
Well, and there's another thing, because the other thing, that I follow target weights. So every one of my ETFs have a target weight.
Yeah.
And the other problem I have when I'm actually looking at reinvesting, because now I got this large cash reserve to do reinvesting in, I look at my C day and say, well, I wanted 4% and I'm already at 4.1. So I'm already at target weight. So putting more into it would mean I'm exceeding my target weight. If I introduce something new, like what's this one symbol called? GPay?
PayG.
PayG.
Yeah.
If PayG joins as a new ETF, it'll have zero weight. So I'll be able to actually basically use a significant single reinvestment and just put it in there and bring it up to 2% like that, right? So,
and you're familiar with BMAX?
I know about. I don't know. I've heard its title, but I don't know much about it. So
BMAX is from Brompton as well, and it's fairly well diversified. It holds mostly equities, but I think there is a small portion of bonds or something.
Yeah.
But it sits around the 9 to 10% yield range.
Yeah.
But Perry, man, it's been as consistent as can be, right? Like no NAV erosion. Share price goes generally up a little bit. And when times are bad, it'll come down a little bit, but not as much as the whole market. So I'm hoping that if Brompton can run this fund the same way they run BMAX,
right,
pay out twice as much.
Yeah.
You know?
Because remember, I just told you that number one Blossom post, what I had a set of rules. My other set of rules is I won't invest in anything with a yield less than 10%. So PayG would actually fit that bill. BMAX would not, because I don't want something at 10% yield. I want something in the 14, minimum 14%. I want closer to the 20% range. Yeah. This one would literally be good. You bring up a very interesting point. We talk about stability. When you're in the anchors, you're looking for stability. You're looking for stability in NAV, and you're looking for stability in distribution. Yeah. And again, say what you want. At the end of the day, if I buy an Evolve cover call ETF, the ones that I buy are as stable can be. I almost never see a down. It's always like pop, 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 level. Yeah. I love it. I don't care about its NAV going up and down. Some people have criticized Canny and, it's going to, again, we talk about cash flow engines, right? I don't worry that the NAV is down 10% or 6% or 3%. At the end of the day, Evolve is paying the same amount every month. So if Brompton does the exact same thing and says, look, you could fluctuate all you want. I don't care where you fluctuate. If you're telling me every month you're going to pay me the same amount, that's the kind of stability I want in my anchors, right? I bought anchors for a reason, right? So
yeah, exactly.
And my goal and your goal is, our priority on total return is income focused total return, not growth focused total return, right? So I'm looking for a stable and growing income total return, not a growing NAV total return, right? So
yeah, you got it.
Yeah. So that's very interesting. You do that, right? So I think the other thing we were talking about also, Paul, was because you and I were saying, well, what kind of topics we're going to talk about tonight and today and stuff like that. You get the same questions I get about taxes. A lot of people ask me the same thing, Perry. Oh, you've got all this significant monthly income. How do you deal with taxes? What are you dealing with taxes? Like, how many questions do you get on that? So.
Yeah, people are always wondering about, they always want me to do a video on what ETFs to buy in a non-registered account. And I think I did one a while ago, but I'm not a tax expert, right? So this isn't really something maybe for me to be telling people. But one thing you'll notice about a lot of ETF providers is if you go on their websites and you look up an ETF, somewhere in there, they often say that they're trying to build it tax efficiently. They try to distribute the monthly income as tax efficiently as possible. I mean, if it's in your margin account and you're making money, you're going to pay some tax, right? But it's not going to be the same as interest or income tax, which I think are the highest taxed forms of income, right? But so Perry, one thing that I didn't know too much about, you were explaining a little bit, and maybe some people have questions about that, is, so you have a LIF and a LIRA. No, you don't have a LIRA, you have a LIF and a RIF. So how does it work when you pull money out of your LIF and your RIF? How are your income
Well, and that's
tax
why I
split?
can't answer. Yeah, that's why I can't answer a lot of people when they say, "Pear, how do you deal with taxes?" Like, you got all this income, you got U.S. cover call ETFs generating foreign income, and they're all coming in. How do you deal with the taxes? Like, how bad is the taxes? And I hate to tell them because maybe I'm an anomaly. 100% of all my covered call ETFs are in sheltered accounts. 100%. I have no income investments in my non-registered. Some people will say, Perry, why are you doing that? There's some advantages in it. You're right, there might be. So my first response about how do you deal with taxes? I don't deal with taxes in of them generating any income because they're all in sheltered accounts. So I
Yeah.
don't have to deal with ACB. I don't have to deal with, how much of it is foreign income versus, Canadian income and all that stuff like that. My life is simple because I have 4 RIFs, which were basically conversions from my 3 RRSPs and my Lira, basically. And I have 2 TFSAs. So TFSAs are the easiest one. Everyone knows that one. So for Americans, they don't know this, but a TFSA is a tax-free savings account. You basically, money can be contributed in there. All the income generated in there, the growth and all that is all tax-free, with the exception of foreign income, which you get hit with a 15% withholding tax. That will happen at source. But other than that, there's no taxes. I don't worry about ACB. I don't worry about capital appreciation. I don't worry about, taxes on the income generated in the TFSA. By the way, same for the RIFs. They do the same thing, less the fact that you don't get hit with a 15% withholding tax. When you withdraw money from a TFSA, it's tax-free. It comes out, the money that you took out that year, the next year, you can add it to your contributions back in. Okay? Simple. When it comes to a RIF is basically a conversion of my RRSP. It's a retirement income fund. A LIF is the exact same as a RIF. It's just that it's restricted on min and max payouts. All you do is when you set it up and you convert it, you basically tell your administrator, which is your broker, I want $1,000 a month taken out of this RIF. They'll say, okay, $1,000 a month, that's over 15,000. You're going to be hit with an automatic CRA 15% or 30% withholding tax. So everything that comes out of my RIF gets taxed 30%. Even if you'll get it back if it's too much, you'll get it back at your filing the next year. But you can also ask your administrator that, hey, by the way, I'm taking out a lot of money. I'm going to be taxed more than 30%. Make sure you take 33% from me. So you can even allocate and tell your administrator when you withdraw money for me, make sure you take 33% away for taxes. So the only taxes I get paid charged on are the taxes that happen when it comes out of my RIFs. The LIF is the same as the RIF. The only difference with a LIF is I cannot go over a certain amount. And I can't, for example, for this year, for me, my maximum for my LIF for 2026 is $2,030. I can't take out more than that each month. Every year they recalculate it. Next year it could be 4,000. Next year it could be 1,000. CRA recalculates it and tells me what's my max. So that's the only difference between a LIF and a RIF. A RIF, I can take it all out in one swoop. Of course, I'll be taxed to death but you'll be taxed as if it's regular employment income. It's the same as employment income. That's how it works. So wow. I don't have tax problem. And I guess maybe do you have any cover call ETFs in your non-reg?
I do. But so for me, Perry, what I always try to tell people when they ask me these questions is, or if I do a video, my number one recommendation is put your investments in your TFSA, in your RSP. Then that way, like you said, you're not worried about how much dividends did you make, how much capital gains, how much foreign income. None of that matters whatsoever, right? So, I could make $8,000 a month between my RSP and my TFSA. Doesn't matter, right?
Doesn't matter.
And so right now I'm pulling $2,000 a month out of my TFSA. That doesn't matter either, right? I can't get taxed on that.
Yeah, and the tax on it.
My RSP so far, I've just left it alone. I'm just still trying to grow and build my RSP. And I do have a small non-registered account. And what I used to do was I would take some of the money I made from there and put it in my RSP. to kind of like offset the income that I was making. And I always got money back.
Right.
This year is the first year where I'm probably not going to do that, but I'm only making $300 a month from that account. And what I do is I take that $300 and I'm using it to build my TFSA. So I'm actually just putting that money into my TFSA.
Right. Now, like the number one rule everyone should know is that you should always max out your TFSA first. It is the number one most valuable sheltered account you can have. If your sheltered account, if your TFSA is not maxed out, that should be your number one priority, right? So in my opinion, that's what you should be doing. So
because I'm actually using my TFSA this year, then next year I'll be able to put that money back. Right. Yeah. So I'm constantly growing the amount that I can put into my TFSA. I get the 7,000 from the government plus whatever I've withdrawn the year before. I can put it back in there. So
and I don't want to just the other thing is I don't want to dismiss RRSPs because some people's like, oh, why would you put money into your RRSPs? Because when you take that money out, you're going to be taxed. Well, duh. That's the whole purpose of an RRSP, and correspondingly, it's RIF when it converts to a RIF, right?
Yeah.
The whole idea was while you were contributing, you were getting tax breaks every time. Yeah. So it's not as if you're being gouged. It's basically you weren't paying those taxes until you actually, you're now, it's a deferred tax. So you now pay when quote unquote, your income's lower. My disadvantage is the fact that I'm earning more now as a retiree than I was when I was working employment. And I was earning six figures as an employee. I'm earning more than that now. So the bad part about it is that rule that says that when your income drops when you're retired, well, my income went up when I retired. But the good part about RIFs is that I can take out only amount of money that I need. Now, of course, that builds up my account higher and higher. And of course, when I die at age 90, I'll leave like $500,000, whatever the number is. And oh boy, that my estate will be taxed 50%. Boy, is that a first world problem to have, is that your, say, $1 million account you left for your kids is taxed by 50%. As opposed to I eroded or melted down my entire portfolio, I had nothing to give them anyways because I literally sold everything. I'd rather give them 50% of $1 million than 10% of 100,000 because I had to melt down all my growth portfolio, right? So,
and if you use your RSP properly, make your contributions, and then take your tax return, put it back in your RSP, and just keep doing that for 30, 35 years, you might turn a few $100,000 into $500,000 or $1 million.
$1 million, and just to tell you, because some people were, again, those that follow me know that I had my daughter's journey on me building their TFSA, and my daughters are using their TFSA monthly income for current living expenses, right? One of them's paying their mortgage with it, but the other one that already has a good salary, she doesn't need that money as much. So she's doing exactly what you were sort of doing, but in a reverse order. She's using the excess TFSA generated money and actually withdrawing it and putting it into her RRSP so she gets a tax deduction. And now she's basically building an RRSP savings account where she could buy growth stocks or cash flow stocks. It doesn't matter which one, but she gets a tax deduction and she basically then lets the TFSA contribute more because whenever you withdraw, you can then put it back the next year. So she's creating a beautiful cycle that literally her TFSA, when she retires, will be tax-free maxed. Her RSP will be building up because of that. So there's some major great advantages in using those two tax sheltered accounts in a cyclical loop, right?
Yeah. And now
none of them without using any employment income. That's the big one. You're not using employment income to contribute to your RSP.
That's right. And young people nowadays, Perry, we should let them know in case anybody's watching, you have your first home savings account as well.
That's another biggie. That's a huge one. Yeah. So keep that in mind as another option is your first home savings plan, right?
Look, as Canadians, we're already taxed to death, right? So you might as well take advantage of all these tax sheltered accounts that the government's providing for us because, and Perry, I don't know what the numbers are, but something like 80% of Canadians don't max out their TFSA, right? They don't use their RSP. So,
and the other problem is with the TFSA, because, and a matter of fact, I don't watch many of his videos at all, but I did watch that Dave Chilton one only because you told me to, because you said, hey, watch this. So I did watch it. But again, they bring up the same thing that I've brought up, you've brought up, everyone's brought up. A TFSA is poorly named. It shouldn't be called a tax-free savings account. It should be a tax-free investment account. Because putting money in there doesn't give you any benefits if you're not making the money work in your TFSA. This is why a cash flow or a growth investment, I'm not saying which one you want to use, but make the money work in the TFSA, because if it isn't generating you anything, either capital gains or monthly cash flow, you might as well put it in the bank, because it's really making no difference. You're tax-free on something that's not generating anything, right?
Yeah,
so
that's right. Yeah.
And keep in mind, also, I want to point out, sorry, I keep talking here. The other thing is, there's some people that follow me and they're basically doing, cash flow, building their cover call ETFs. Some of them are actually even thinking of swing trading. I want to point it out. If you're swing trading, be very careful swing trading inside a TFSA. There are CRA rules, and unfortunately, the CRA is very, in my opinion, neglectful in not providing clear rules, what those rules are. They give you really abstract words for don't do short-term trading, but they don't tell you what short-term trading is. So be careful doing a lot of buys and sells of the same investment in a cyclical way. That likely would maybe trigger a CRA flag. And then they could look at you and say, man, you know what? Our secret rules say that was too many times. Unfortunately, you don't know what those many times are. Don't take chances. I would sort of say wait at least 30 days to do a sell buy. Like rebalancing is one thing, but sell buying on the same one which shows in a swing or day trading, it might trigger things. So be very careful for those people that are doing that, right?
Yeah, that's actually a question people ask me all the time. How do I buy and sell so often in my TFSA?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I don't.
No.
So what I'm doing is I get dividends every week, right? Because, I get dividends all the time.
Right.
I take those dividends and I buy ETFs. So I'm always buying.
Buying is not the same as cyclical trading.
Right. So once I decide like ENCL hits $22 a share, I want to sell 500 shares and realize some gains.
Right.
If tomorrow ENCL goes down to $18, I'm not going to buy it back again.
Right.
I will wait at least 30 plus a few days.
Right.
Right. So
just to be safe.
Usually it doesn't go down that quickly. It's going to take. Yeah, it's going to take a little while, but I will not buy back ENCL until over 30 days has gone by.
Yeah, just to be safe. And again, it's not that that's the rule.
Yeah.
It's a good unwritten rule, because generally they say there's another one called arm's length loss harvesting.
Yeah.
And that's in the non-reg. Like in the non-reg, you can't sell something for a loss and then buy it back for a gain within 30 days. So they use the rule 30 days there. So the only reason you and I are sort of saying wait 30 days is because that's what the CRA does use for tax loss harvesting. They use a 30-day rule. So
yeah, I only use 30 days because I've seen other people talk about it, but it's not, as far as I know, that's not an actual hard and fast rule by CRA. Yeah. But, it makes sense. It does kind of make sense. You know what I mean? Because if I was selling ENCL today, buying it back tomorrow, selling it again in a few days, well, now you're day trading, you're swing trading. Plus, I think some other rules come into play, right, Perry? Like if you have a job and you're earning income from your job, you're not living off of your day trading or swing trading,
right?
And if you make a few $100s, it's not a big deal.
Right.
The one guy that got caught, he grew his TFSA from like 50 grand to like $500,000.
Yeah, I remember that court case. Yeah, it'll be the people are like, oh, gee, I better stop doing it. So if you've done it a few times and you've maybe made $100 or $200. Chances are the CRA is going to say, I got bigger fish to fry. It doesn't mean you're not wrong, right? It just means they've got bigger fish to fry. So it's better just to be safe and not be as cyclical. You can swing trade. You just got to make sure when you do swing trade, the cycle is long enough that you're not showing that you're doing it on a daily basis or an hourly basis, right?
Yeah.
So again, I really wish the CRA would just come out clearly and say, this is what I mean by short-term investing, right? It's like they don't tell you a number, right? But I just want people to know, by the way, I've already put it in I'm going to put it in the top of the video that we're going to have a disclaimer. Just remember, Paul and I are not tax experts. We're not CRA experts. We're just giving our blind two doofuses on a camera opinions here, right? So
you know what? We're just sharing with everybody as transparently as possible what we've been doing with our passive income journeys. That's all.
Right. It's our opinions and our journeys. Use them the way you, but do your own research for sure. Do your own research. So yeah.
All right, Perry, we've cracked well over the hour mark.
I think we better stop. I think I got it right here. Hour 14. We're not bad. We've done longer.
So. I got to run. I got some things to do, but definitely we'll get back together in a month and see how April goes.
Yeah, we'll see. And you guys out there, be safe and invest wisely.
Yeah.
And we'll see you again in about a month.
All right. Take care.
Okay. See you guys later.